Some days I find myself thinking, I wish I just wouldn't wake up in the morning. And then I think, but I don't want my husband to have to grow up or live without his wife, or my kids to grow up without their children or without their mother. This is a message that we received on Stigma app from a member who answered no to our security question, is this a mental health emergency? Acknowledging that we are struggling with our mental health is hard, but asking for help is even harder. Lack of trust in providers and the types of treatment available, and not knowing where to get started are the two primary reasons that 34 million Americans who are struggling with their mental health don't seek treatment. So at Stigma, we're solving this problem by creating engaging human stories that open people up emotionally. When they feel ready to seek support, we provide them easy on-ramps to resources that they didn't know existed. When we did this for the member whose story I shared and repeated, and message I repeated at the top of this call, she accepted. I know I need to see a therapist, she said. I just didn't know where to start. At Stigma, our vision is to be the most trusted mental health content destination in the world. Companies like NerdWallet use long-form blog post content to help you understand something really complex, your financial health, and then they connect you with resources that can help you build that health. At Stigma, we use video content to educate people about their mental health and connect them with resources that match their lived experience. I am Ariana Vargas. I'm the founder of Stigma. I created it to make asking for help and finding help easier. And I am a non-technical founder and super grateful to be here at this conference with a lot of technical people to talk about how I brought this idea into the world. It was not easy and it was a long road, and I will tell you some details of that story in a little bit. But one thing I wanted to share before getting into more is that on August 2nd of 2022, we launched our MVP of our mobile app. And I can talk about how that was built. Please feel free to put questions in the Slack keynote channel and respond there as well. I can't see it right now, but I'll be able to see it in a minute. But August 2nd, 2022, we launched the MVP of an app that totally didn't feel ready and had all the bugs and all the things you hear. And 120 days later, I got an email from Google, and they said, we're going to announce in a week that you're one of the best apps of the year. And I didn't know how many there would be, and I didn't believe that it was true because we didn't apply for it. And then they announced the news and they said Stigma is 2022's best app for good. 120 days into existence, that's what we won. And we were named one of the 7 best apps of the year. So for anyone who's at this conference and thinking about an idea that you have or something you're working on and wondering if you can make it real, you can, because if I can do it, you can do it. But that happening was enormous for us. We, within 5 days, doubled the size of the community. But the thing for me that is biggest, and that will add, I hope, a little legitimacy to a title that I probably had no business giving this keynote, which is including the line about saving lives, is that since we launched the app, 50% of people who share suicidal thoughts on our platform, messages asking for hope, saying that they're thinking about not wanting to be alive in the future, 50% of those people accept help. We have a free care coordination partner that we work with, and a process that we developed with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and medical and mental health professionals. But part of that process is to reach out and say, there are people who can help. Can we put you in touch with them? So just to sort of let you know why the title of this keynote was the title of this keynote. When people struggle in silence for too long, the results can be devastating. If you are watching this right now and you're struggling, you're not alone. We're going to get really into feelings in this presentation, but the thing I am most proud of anything that you will hear in my story today is that data point, that we are validating that we are a place that people will come when they're struggling, that they are willing to be open and vulnerable and share what they're struggling with, and that in 50% of cases where we see suicidal thoughts, that people are willing to accept help. So I wanted to share that as kind of a kickoff to what this is. And we're going to watch a lot of videos today. I'm a filmmaker. You'll hear more about me, but the first video I want to share with you is a video that kind of explains how Stigma works a little bit on the technical side and the user experience side. So,
this is the Stigma app. In it, members can watch stories to see living proof that they're not alone, and ask for or receive messages of hope from members who share their lived experience. As our members engage with content, we learn more about their needs and recommend stories and resources that are relevant to them. When someone struggles with their mental health, they're looking for hope. So that's exactly what we give them.
I never thought I'd have support like this, ever. And so accessible. And so, it's not even validation. It really is hope. So thank you for giving us this opportunity.
So a version of what I opened with and that video are what I shared when I did Techstars demo day. For those not familiar, Techstars is a popular accelerator. They kind of help you figure out your business plan and some of your tech stuff. And I finished that program in December, so just a couple of months ago. And the process of all of this started way sooner than that. Sort of the short term history, I started working on this May 1st of 2021. And I had just gone on a medical mental health leave for work. I think it's important to talk about these things. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It took a lot of courage to do it. I am one of the 46% of Americans who will personally experience mental illness. If you are one of my 46 club, please feel free to put a +1 in the keynote on Slack chat. Or put the illnesses that you are navigating. I am diagnosed with anxiety disorder and panic attacks. And in the early part of 2021, I was mourning the loss of my best friend. And 6 weeks after she died, my only child was diagnosed with autism, and I was terrified. I was super scared. I was really depressed. I will also cry in this presentation, maybe a lot, because I believe that there is a place in business and in technology for emotion and tears. So thank you for being a group that I can't see yet, but I can cry with. It was a really hard time. And I was trying to figure out how to do my work and how to manage everything that I was going through. So I waited 6 weeks after my therapist suggested going on a mental health leave. I did it. While I was gone, my position was eliminated. And it was the best thing that could have happened. And I actually really mean that, because I really needed a change, and I needed to lean into something that mattered to me and that I loved and that I cared about. And one of the things I knew was that I really cared about telling stories. I've always been a storyteller. I have held leadership positions at venture-backed startups and Fortune 500s, and really work with brands and people on telling stories that will resonate. But the stories that mattered to me most were stories about mental health, and that's sort of where Stigma, the sort of longer version of the history of how it got started, starts, and it starts right here. I highly recommend, when you're doing presentations to lots and lots of people, to put pictures of yourself in awkward phases of your adolescence, with like snaggle teeth and then with braces, because you can't take yourself too seriously when that happens. So I like to incorporate this. But my story starts in Costa Rica, where I was born to a father with schizophrenia. This is me with my dad. I grew up in the United States, and my parents separated and then would go back and stay for summers. So when I think of schizophrenia, this is what I think of. When you think of schizophrenia, maybe, or for a lot of people, when they think of schizophrenia, they think of something really, really different. And there is a reason for that. There is a TED Talk that if you haven't seen, you should get out a pen right now or your keyboard and take a note to watch this when you get a chance, today or tomorrow. It is a TED Talk that is one of the most watched in the world, and it's called The Danger of a Single Story by a Nigerian author named Chimamanda Adichie. And in this story, in addition to talking about the power of storytelling, what she focuses the bulk of her time on is who tells the story and how often it's told and how it's told has such an impact in shaping our perception of, what we gain from that story. And for human beings, we're going to base our opinions on things in this world on the personal lived experience that we have and the stories we consume. And I always say, and it sounds kind of like a joke, but it's true, when I was a young person, the only stories that you could consume about schizophrenia with any schizophrenic characters or people were on Law and Order or the evening news. And that is not representative at all of the majority of cases of how people with schizophrenia, especially those who are medicated and have support, how they live and what their lives look like. So again, I heard schizophrenia and I thought of it. And other people heard schizophrenia, or I told them that my dad was schizophrenic, and they thought of scary, violent stories that they had seen in the media. There were a lot of people who didn't react well. I don't blame them anymore, but as a child, the impact that had on me was to make me just never talk about it, to bottle it up, to not talk about it at all. I don't recommend that. It's not healthy at all, but I do think that in a lot of ways, all of this stuff was leading to me creating stigma. So I mentioned my best friend, my friendship soulmate. This is Lauren Washam. She was my freshman year, like random selection roommate in college, and just like a sister and a wonderful soul in this world. In 2019, she was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive cancer, and it took her 9 months. It gave us a lot of time to talk about not waiting to live the life you want to live. Sometimes I cry more, sometimes I cry less. If you're a crier, +1 in the chat. And what I knew was I'd always wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. I wanted to be a person who was contributing stories to the public conversation about mental health, about these things that are misunderstood, so the people going through them have a chance of having people understand who they are and wanting to get to know them. So I couldn't have told you I was going to start Stigma. I just thought I'm going to be a documentary filmmaker. Like that's always been since I was maybe 20, the answer to like, if you never had to work a day in your life, if money was no object, what would you be? Documentary filmmaker. And so I decided I was going to shoot a film that Lauren could see before she passed away. And I did. And it's on Amazon if you want to see it. It is, I'm really proud of it. It's been in 3 film festivals around the country. I'm super proud of that as well. I was able to screen it for Lauren. This is her watching it before she passed away. She was the first person to see it outside of the subject of the film. I'm gonna go away from the slides so I don't cry too much anymore. We have a lot to get through. This story was a story about PTSD, and the subject was a man who was born into the inner city projects of Philly. He was in 10 different foster homes, abused in all of them, an orphan who was never adopted. And what I knew was that people understood PTSD mostly through the lens of people who have been to war or been in combat. And there was less conversation, especially at that time, about people navigating complex PTSD and PTSD as a result of trauma of sort of adverse childhood experiences or abuse. So I shot this. I was not, didn't get huge distribution, but suddenly something started to happen, and that was that people started reaching out. Total strangers to me and to the film subject. And to me, they were saying, can I share my story? Or when are you going to do a story about, and they would share, something they had gone through. And a lot of them asked to talk to him. And what he was getting were in-mails on LinkedIn and Instagram messages and Facebook messages, a lot from men who were saying the same thing happened to me. And what they were referring to was he talked in his story about being a survivor of child sexual abuse. And the messages he was getting from men were, I can't believe you talked about it. No one ever talks about it. And they wanted to connect with him. And so I watched during the pandemic, this thing happen where he was having conversations over text, and it was often asynchronous. But the value that came from it was that both sides felt more seen and heard, and the shame sort of cloud was dissipating a little with every conversation. And it was at that moment that I realized I can't just be a filmmaker, because inspiring people isn't enough. You have to give them a place where they can take action, and that action can be different. It can be looking for community, it can be asking for help. But I thought, okay, that's what I have to do. And again, I'm a filmmaker with a brand background, and came to the States and was on food stamps and free school lunch programs and got scholarships to all the schools, and really thought I have to go the path of like sure thing and making a salary, and also how am I going to build something technical. But it was like that cliche you hear a lot with founders, which is just, I knew the world needed it and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and it combined all of these things that I loved, and I thought, well, maybe I can turn this into something. So I put together probably the world's worst pitch deck in the world, and it was a mess, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I went to a couple of investors and I said, I have this idea, and here's what it looks like, and I need funding. And the 2 that I met with said, yeah, I don't think people are going to be as open about talking about their mental health as you think they are. And in the Midwest, we have a saying, bet, which is like, oh God, challenge accepted. I didn't say those words, I just thought them in my head. And I was like, game on, I got this. So I kind of on a whim, one Tuesday morning, sitting at a coffee shop in my neighborhood of Logan Square in Chicago, put something on the Facebook neighborhood group. I had never posted there before. I was not an active member, but I just said, essentially, I'm a local documentary filmmaker. I'm trying to make this mental health app. Investors don't believe me. Are you willing to talk to me about your mental health? Here's a link to a movie I've done on Amazon, so I'm a real person. I can't pay you anything. All I can give you is a free headshot, and you're going to be vulnerable on camera, and I'm going to share it with the entire world. Like, what a deal. And I remember I got up to go to the bathroom because I thought like, maybe I'm gonna get trolled. I don't really know. It's kind of like nervous energy. And by the time I got back, it was kind of like, you know, a scene from a movie where the notifications were like a lot more than they should be. And I saw people being like, Britt, you should do this. You're talking about this all the time. Or people saying, I'm in. And I put in the post, send me an email if you're interested, to kind of not have to weed through Facebook comments. And in 24 hours, 50 people emailed me and said, I want to share my story. So I had to scramble a little bit to figure out. I had to ask my creative partner, my DP, who does the camera work for all of our content. Will you work for free? Because I have no money, but I offered this and now we have to do it. I found someone to give me a space for free. And in June of 2021, over the course of 3 days, I shot a video, because what I knew I couldn't do was build an MVP. I can't write a single line of code. I don't know how to program. I'm not an engineer. But I do know how to tell a story. And I knew at this stage of fundraising, it was about helping people see the vision for what I knew this could be. And so I just decided I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to use this. I'm going to make a video and see if that's enough, see if that as a proof of concept will work. So I'd like to share that video that I made from that 3 days of filming with you now.
What if you held the power to help others feel less alone in the palm of your hands? And what if that same tool helped you feel seen and supported in times when you feel lonely? My name is Ariana Alejandra Gibson, and I'm the founder of Stigma app. There's a great quote by a mental health activist named Jake Tyler that goes something to the effect of, depression is the least exclusive club in the world, but its greatest trick is convincing you that you're the only member. I want to change that. So I'm building an app that connects people who are struggling with people who share their lived experience and creates a safe space for us to share our stories. I call this Crowdsourcing Hope. I'd love to show you what it looks like. 2 weeks ago, I posted a message on my neighborhood Facebook page asking for volunteers to come on camera and talk about their mental illness or other misunderstood condition. In 24 hours, 50 people emailed me offering to share their stories.
Hi, my name's Jamar.
My name is Jocelyn.
I live with anxiety and OCD.
I live with depression.
I live with bipolar disorder type 2.
When they got to set, I asked them to talk to me about what a good day looks like versus a bad one.
To have a good day, a lot of prep and effort goes into that.
A bad day is I don't take care of myself.
We talked about the tools that they use to manage their mental health.
Once the cycle hits, I know what to do. So I have my game plan.
Making sure I get exercise in, even if it's just a walk some days.
And lastly, I asked them if they ever felt lonely living with their mental illness or other misunderstood condition.
When I first kind of realized that I had depression, I was very scared to tell people.
You're not sure who else is fighting the same battles. You're not sure who's gonna understand.
I felt very lonely, because it wasn't the kind of thing that people talked about.
What I didn't tell any of them was that for the 2 weeks prior, I had been working on a surprise for them. I started reaching out to friends, family, former colleagues, and asking people if they'd be interested in recording a message of hope for a stranger who shared their lived experience. I wanted to create an analog version of the type of hope that the app will bring people once it's built. So before the volunteers left, I asked them to do me one more small favor. I was wondering if it'd be okay if I have you watch a video from a stranger?
Yeah.
I've found someone who also went through what you went through.
Okay.
So can I have you watch a video?
Sure.
So I have a message of hope from a stranger.
Oh, cool.
It's such a good idea.
Then I asked them what it felt like to watch a kind video from a stranger who shares their lived experience.
There is both something really jarring and really comforting about hearing a total stranger talk about things that have been in your head.
I've never heard anybody say that, and it was like an instant connection. It was validating. It felt nice to hear someone say, like, I hear what you've been through and I understand that it was hard.
It so closely mirrored some of the stuff that I went through. It was surprising.
Connecting with people who feel the way you feel when you feel like you're the only one that feels that way is so powerful.
It's really nice to be emotionally intimate with somebody, I think, and especially someone that, you know, mental health professionals are great, you know, therapists are great, psychiatrists are great, but just to sort of share your time freely with somebody, I think is a really special experience.
Watching a kind message from a stranger who I may never meet in my own life, but still know that he took the time to make that message, it's really cool. It incentivizes me to just be able to do the same thing for people. So for a platform to exist where people can just do that back and forth is really, really cool.
Thank you so much for this. This was so lovely. It was so nice to hear from her and just hear her laugh about it too. Like, oh, what the hell are we gonna do? We just gotta find some strategies. That's exactly how it is. I loved this, thank you.
If I could have heard that when I was a kid, I don't know, I'm a little speechless.
Yeah, an app like this would have helped. Like this kind of just like really, yeah, that's, oh my God. Like everybody needs that, everybody deserves this.
This is what it looks like to crowdsource hope. Sometimes all it takes to make someone feel seen is to share our stories, to prove that they're not alone. And when we do so from a hopeful place, we offer living proof that even if right now they're feeling low, this feeling will not last forever. So if you are watching this and you're struggling, you are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Nie jesteś sam.
You are not alone.
You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You're not alone.
You really are not alone.
The sooner this app is built, the sooner we can start sharing our stories and crowdsourcing hope.
So since filming that, that day of filming, I have now interviewed almost 200 people about everything that affects our mental health. And that doesn't just mean diagnoses you find in the DSM-5. It is not just bipolar and depression and anxiety and diagnosable mental illnesses. It's miscarriage and divorce and job loss and all of the things that really affect our ability and how we show up in this world and our ability to feel healthy with our mental health. You notice at the end that I had that sort of series of people saying you are not alone, and I've interviewed almost 200 people. Every single one of them I have say that statement in the language that they prefer. And the vision is to one day have a 24-hour video that people can stream on YouTube if they're having a really hard time. They could just hit play and hear it over and over again, and at some point in 24 hours, hopefully see or hear someone who sounds or looks like them. Because we need to see ourselves represented in media and in content. It's going to take a really long time. So I don't know if it'll be 24-hour. I may give up and have it be a 2-hour video, but at some point that should happen. But then, well, things happened, and things happened because I worked really hard. And so I won't pretend that it just happened overnight. But I started putting these stories from editing these stories myself, doing everything on my own, trying to pitch. And I used that story, that video we just watched, to pitch a first check fund that's called Long Jump VC in Chicago. I played that video, and one of the founders of the fund laughed later on and said, you know, he introduced me to someone. He said, this woman gave the best pitch I've ever seen, but it started out as the worst pitch I've ever seen because she started by saying, I'm going to do the pitch and then I'm going to show you a 6-minute video at the end. And I showed that video. I played the whole thing, and it got me my first check, my first $100,000. So I started raising money, but and was putting stuff on TikTok, and I, you know, had one of our videos got 500,000 views, and we have 2 million views of our content now. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm sharing the story, but I don't know where I'm sending people. I said the app is coming, and what I was doing was trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do to build an app. I have a fractional CTO, Bill Gouchon, who's an incredible human being. You should look him up. But we were talking about what this could look like, and he wasn't going to build it, but he was sort of helping me think about what kind of technology I could use. And I came to him when we started talking. I said, here's what I've looked at. And I had talked to an overseas company that could do the work. I talked to a company based in the US that then sort of offshores their work with developers abroad. I talked to dev shops here. I talked to individual engineers to understand what did they need to make and how much did I need to raise and what could this look like. And the advice my fractional CTO gave me was that if I went for an option that was a little bit technology agnostic in the sense of if I were to hire a React Native engineer to lead it, then most solutions might sort of be built on React Native, which ultimately our mobile app was, and I can talk about that too. But I wanted to keep it open because this was also at a time when I was thinking about, like, do we do this on Web3? Do we build on blockchain because then people own their content? And it was sort of, it felt like there was a lot of hype around it, but I didn't fully understand it. And so I ultimately leaned into what I felt comfortable with, which was a personal referral to a company in Chicago called Unicorn Road, run by a man named John Osler. And he has an enterprise sort of app building company that works with the enterprise clients. And he missed the work of helping entrepreneurs get ideas off the ground. And so he created Unicorn Road to try and help entrepreneurs like me who don't have a technical background stand up a low code solution. So I would talk with him about what I wanted to create, what I wanted to build, and how I wanted people to interact. And what we did was find just kind of a buffet of low-code API solutions. So the website was built on Webflow. Our videos to this day in our award-winning Google app are hosted, and the interaction happens through Video Ask. We got to do a cool talk with Video Ask because we were using their tool in a very different way than they had ever anticipated. We used member stack to organize our people. We have a lot of Zap, a lot of Zap. We, I think, have Airtables. We had all of these different pieces that we put together to build what was our low code first MVP, which was a web application. We launched that December 18th, 2021. So from June to December, I raised the money and we did the work to be able to do that low code MVP. And then it was really a matter of trying to understand what people liked. I thought people were going to want to share their story and just click a button and share their own. No one touched that feature. Granted, it doesn't feel as engaging or interactive to not have a mobile app. And I met a lot of people who were like, don't do a mobile app. That's a barrier to entry. And I thought, you don't know. I do. Like, this is for Gen Z. I built it because Gen Z is the most in need. So we know that their mental health is struggling the most. 50% of people who will experience mental illness in their lifetime have felt their first symptom by the time they're 14. 75% have felt their first symptom by the time they're 24. And the average amount of time between when someone first starts to struggle with their mental health and when they first seek treatment is 11 years. And so what I knew was that we needed to start helping people earlier, and that young people don't want to have a live phone call, that asynchronous video or text or audio communication was good. But I knew that we could meet people earlier in the mental health care continuum. There are 60 to 80% of people with treatable mental illness don't seek treatment, and they're not going to be opened up and ready to seek treatment if you hand them a self-guided cognitive behavioral therapy app, because they have to first acknowledge that they're struggling. And so, they say that data doesn't change people's behavior, stories do. And so I was really looking for a vehicle for my stories. And that is sort of the history of that part of the business. We, working with Bill, who is a professor at Columbia College in Chicago, we found a group of young college students who were excited about the problem and wanted to work on this. And they were paid part-time as employees to build this app. And it's so exciting to be able to say, like, the award-winning app, that Google nominated, was built by young developers. I'm really proud of them. They are all proud to have participated in it, but it was just a cool way to bring this thing to life. And I think very much, I hope a lot of you are downloading the app right now. I hope that I've inspired enough that that's already happening. And if you have, you'll notice there's some things that could be better. But what it tells me is that when the world needs something badly enough, people are kind of okay with the tech not being totally perfect. So on here, I have just a little bit of the traction that we've gotten as a business. It's been really exciting to help people to get some visibility for what we're doing. I'm excited to tell you at the end of this, we'll get back to tech. So it's like tech club sandwich, where I'm going to do some tech and then a lot of feelings and stuff and then a little more tech. But if you have questions that you want to ask, feel free to put them in the Keynote channel on Slack. I'm happy to be interrupted, Calvin or Laura, if you want to throw anything out on the technical side, because we are about to get into some more stories. So we can go either way, but I'll maybe, if I don't hear an interruption on a question, I will hit play on a story and then I'll pause after that story. But I will say one more thing though about story while we see if there are questions on tech. Obviously, I'm not a technical person, so I can't answer sophisticated ones, but I can tell you what I've done. But I just wanted to put this out there as well, just to kind of help you see where I went from creating this, wanting to create an app where people could find each other, to sort of what is the macro problem we're solving. And it's that young people are really struggling. An enormous percentage of Gen Z is struggling with their mental health. 42% of them have a diagnosed mental illness, like right now. So what we are doing is using storytelling as an intervention so that we can get people on the path of healing sooner. So we create, long form documentaries and short form content, put it on the places where young people are already spending their time, like TikTok, and then get them to come in and engage with our platform. So because we are really this sort of media network, this storytelling platform, I wanted to bring stories today in hope that in the diversity of stories that I've brought, that something will strike a chord or resonate with people. And I would love for you to engage in the chat if you are willing and want to. Maybe if something resonates, type a +1, or if there's a comment that you want to make. But whoever is going first, and maybe everyone's doing it right now. I hope that that's happening and you're all talking about all of your mental health stuff, but doing it for a person who maybe hasn't had the opportunity to have someone else in a group that they're in say me too can be really powerful. I will just share that. But I wanted to share some stories today that are just a wide sort of swath of human experience. And the first one we're going to start with is Lena, who is going to talk about disability and chronic illness and how we show up in the world and at work.
I think one thing I would like people to understand about depression, anxiety, pain, disability, all these things is that these are not bad. There's nothing bad or good about them. They just are. People don't like to think of themselves as disabled, and mental health and physical health can both be seen as disabled because they significantly change and impact your life. That's part of the definition of a disability. It implies something about how you will be treated and seen, and both in a day-to-day interaction, but also in terms of what's out there, what's resources, how people see you, how they think of you. Like, can you do a job? Can you be a good parent? Can you be all these things? And the answer is a resounding yes. You can absolutely be all these things. I founded a business. I take care of my entire team. I bought a house. I have a job. I do all these things. And I have a mental illness. And now I have a chronic disability. And it's fine. One thing I would like people to know who are actually employers and bosses and leaders is how the experience of mental health and physical health and disability shows up for people is so widely different. And if you want to keep smart, talented people doing whatever it is you do, it's your responsibility as fellow leaders and business owners to rethink all of the workplace things. I started working with other people who had disabilities before my disability diagnosis, and that really pushed all of us to figure out how to do better and what does it mean and how does this shape the work world for all of us. And so it really was important to me to talk about these things, but I think it was really important to give people with disabilities, and people with very different disabilities than my own, an opportunity to speak up and say from their own perspectives, this is what I need, this is how it shows up.
Next, I'm going to share Jocelyn's story. A lot of people are learning that they are neurodivergent and learning as adults, especially women, or people who identify as women. I think it's important for us to understand how that can show up in the workplace. And Jocelyn does a really fantastic job of talking about how her neurodivergence in the form of ADHD affects her.
So with having ADHD, I mean, the thing that can be difficult is when you try to explain to other people what you're experiencing or what that is like. And so, so many times things will happen where I'm like, oh, I am so incredibly forgetful. I can't believe how many things I forget. Or, it's almost like my brain feels fractured. So when you're telling people what this feels like or what it is you're experiencing, and all they come back with is like, well, everybody experiences that. It's just totally invalidating. You desperately want the people that you work with, the people that you live with or share your life with to understand just how different and at times difficult it is to live, with ADHD or whatever it is that you have. So I teach at a university, and every single class I have, as much as I can, I talk about the fact that I have ADHD with my students because I think it is so important to normalize this. I think especially because there's this idea that if you have ADHD, it's hard to be academically inclined, right? Like we have this stereotype. Ensuring that we normalize the fact that there are these other ways of being, there are these other ways of brains being structured and living and interacting in the world. Just knowing that these things that neurotypicals really value, they're not flaws of you. They're this thing that whatever you have leads you to act in that way or be that way, and that's not your fault. It's not core to who you are. I wore those labels of lazy and irresponsible and uncaring for so long. And they really, they shaped how I viewed the world and viewed myself in it. And getting diagnosed gave me the space to sort of figure out, well, who am I without those labels?
Next, I want to share Avesh's story. Avesh talks about racism that he has experienced and his multicultural upbringing.
You feel like you're living two identities out at the same time. And that is definitely sort of the circumstance and the story that played out for me. I'm a first-generation immigrant, so my family actually was, born and raised in India. I was born in Kolkata, and I ended up living there for 4 years before my dad's work took him to Belgium, so lived there another 4 years. Finally immigrated to Colorado, Golden, Colorado, right next to the Coors Light factory at the age of 9, and so lived there for another 4 years. Finally grew up, out of all places, in Munster, Indiana. Just this incredible hodgepodge of cultures and different nationalities and different facets of life where, looking back, I realized how awesome was it to have that story. But the downsides of it, of course, was that, I did live a dual life like a lot of my other Indian American friends and a lot of my other immigrant friends. We had this beautiful kind of side to us that was, Indian. It's very, it's near and dear to us. It's our heritage, it's our culture. But then you have this other side, which is, hey, we gotta adjust to this American culture or we're gonna get eaten up alive. You automatically kind of get put in these buckets that I feel like hopefully has gotten better over time with social media and networking and the social media effect that hopefully kind of brings those confirmation biases and those racism aspects to light. But growing up, I didn't have a lot of those tools. You just kind of do your best to blend in, to acclimate, to adjust to life and kind of, build up thick skin is how our families put it, how our friends put it. But now as an adult, I look back and it's like, that was a shitty experience. That could have been better. It could have been more welcoming. I didn't have to deal with a lot of that bullying. It was cast on me. My good friend put it really well where he was like, it came out of nowhere and it really struck me. He was like, hey, have you ever had a day pass by where you haven't thought about being brown? And I was like, oh, huh. You notice day in, day out, it's like, I wish there was better representation. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish there were better ways to sort of, deal with that and create a support group or figure out ways to fight it. And so, yeah, it is something that is on my mind. It's obviously not as bad as it was kind of growing up, but it's definitely shaped, how I am and how I deal with, integrity and respect and being able to give back to those communities, being able to think of how I can make an impact in minimizing that racism and minimizing that confirmation bias as a founder, as an employer.
Kendra's story is next, and she follows some sort of similar tones. I resonate with her a lot, with her story a lot, because she is the mother of a child with medical needs, and she's also a founder.
So I wear a number of hats in my life. I'm a mother to a child with medical needs. I'm also attempting to, run a business, multiple businesses actually. I've found often that a lot of the challenges that I have experienced are multifaceted. There are times where I have pitched my business to a room full of young white males and they just don't get it, whether it's because it's the voice of a Black person or it's also because it's the voice of a woman. I've often dealt with meetings where I have been told that I am too outspoken or that maybe I should just wait and hear what somebody else has to say, or the way that I'm providing feedback, it's too aggressive. Can you be nicer? I would leave work and I'd break down crying because I would say, I don't understand. I'm trying my best. And meanwhile, they're talking to me about the heels that I'm wearing or not wearing, or the emojis that I'm including or not including in my emails. Some of the things that has been most helpful for me is striking out on my own and becoming an entrepreneur. And if someone does say something like that to me, I feel empowered to speak up and, stand up for myself in those scenarios. That's one of the things that I love the most about being an entrepreneur, is having that autonomy, but also having the power to stand firm in my professionalism, stand firm in what I know to be true, is that I am a damn good publicist and I know it. And I can stand up for myself and I can say, this is the recommendation, and you don't need an emoji or an exclamation point to get that message across.
Hope we're getting a lot of +1s on the email, text communication, and emojis and all of that, exclamation points. Next is a story about alcoholism.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm 49 years old and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for about 6.5 years. When you first drank, it was to have fun and to lower your inhibitions and to just enjoy yourself. I think true alcoholism turns it into the complete opposite. Alcoholism is a disease in a lot of cases of isolation. It's not a disease of partying a lot. There are a lot of people who reached out to me when I was struggling. And when I was struggling and didn't want help, but they planted some seeds that eventually I took them up on their offers, and I think that's one of the most important things in sobriety is that you ask for help and you surround yourself with a community, whether it's large or small, of people who've been through the same thing and they get it, and you can just relate these stories that you've had, and the good times and the bad. I do think that this can be a slow process. It doesn't have to happen overnight.
Running up on time, so I'm gonna do one more from one of the crew members who's worked on a lot of our shoots.
So being behind the camera for some stigma interviews was phenomenal to see, and I know how much this has helped me, and just watching the TikToks and even watching the edits being played out, and seeing people describe themselves and describe some of the most horrible feelings they've ever felt in their life, and being able to say it in a freeing space, in such a freeing manner. I wanted to help other people. And I knew I could, and I think this was a big step for and being the sample to example for my family. I know this is a big step for them. I get to go home and tell my younger brothers hey, your big bro talked about this really big this shit that that everybody told us wasn't real, So thanks to Stigma for that, because I wouldn't have had the courage without it, honestly.
I'm going to skip ahead to end on a note of excitement. I know I have almost no time left. There's, I think, a breakout kind of thing after this if anyone has questions, but I just want to get people excited on the tech side about what we have coming next. Everyone talks about generative AI. Everyone wants to use it in a different way, but we plan to use generative AI trained on narrative therapy. So narrative therapy is the idea of separating the person from the problem. So instead of saying John is an angry person, you say John is a person who gets angry easily. When were the last times that John was angry? And you kind of work through that. So that is what's coming next for us, to make people empowered to be able to change the stories they tell to themselves about themselves, with everything's centered on storytelling. My email address is here. If you have questions, if you were inspired, if you want to help me, I'm non-technical. I will take any help, ideas, and all of that anyone wants to share. I'm super grateful. Oh, right on.